I'm frustrated about something
Yeah.
and I just won't say anything to my partner about it because I want to be a nice guy. Like, it's unreasonable for me to say, this thing here is frustrating me. So I will sit on it and sit on it and sit on it until I get really frustrated and just do what he calls a victim puke.
A victim puke. Okay.
Yeah, which is literally... So, a bit of context for you guys. I listened to a interview with a guy called Dr. Robert Glover. So I think about 15, 17 years ago, he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it was quite a controversial book because if you think about it, when it was introduced to me, I thought, well, nice guys, what's wrong with being a nice guy? But the way he unpacks it in his book is amazing. And it really, makes you reflect on, have I got traits of a nice guy? And is that why things aren't working out, say in relationships or work or whatever it may be?
Okay.
So getting back to what a covert contract is, it's an agreement that you haven't actually made, but which you believe to be solid. So just an example is, and this is what Robert Glover talks about. So a contract which says, I'm going to meet all of my partner's needs without him or her asking. And in return, I expect him or her to do the same for me, even when I don't tell him or her what I want.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never done that before.
Exactly. No one has, right?
No, I've never done that.
I don't know why I even brought it up. Completely unreasonable, unrelatable.
Oh my God, are you talking about me, Adam?
But it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And, he talks about, because I could even think about it in my current relationship where a couple of times now, because what he talks about, right, is the problem with these contracts is no one knows about them, no one signed them, and they never come to fruition.
Yeah.
And then the nice guy gets really frustrated because he's like, hold on, I'm doing everything that's in the contract and the other party's not actually meeting the agreement. Like, this isn't cool. And then it starts to manifest in these resentments and passive aggressive actions and things like that. And I can say in my relationship, I did the same thing, which was, I'm frustrated about something and I just won't say anything to my partner about it because I want to be a nice guy. Like, it's unreasonable for me to say, this thing here is frustrating me. So I will sit on it and sit on it and sit on it until I get really frustrated and just do what he calls a victim puke.
A victim puke. Okay.
Yeah, which is literally, you could be sitting there doing the dishes and you go, I hate this thing. And, your significant
But are you puking about that? Like, are you puking about the actual issue or are you just puking about, is it like where everything just comes out over something that's not related?
Everything. Yeah. Okay. So like maybe you are frustrated about, I don't know, something inconsequential like doing the dishes.
Right.
But then all of a sudden it gets blown up into this big thing and then you just let everything come out.
And you're like, you did this to me 5 years ago.
Yeah. You're like, whoa. And, like Robert Glover talks about it in his relationship where he would just explode and do a victim puke at his ex-wife. Yeah. And she'd be like, how long were you holding on to this for? And he's like, 6 months or so. And she's like, didn't you think maybe to bring it up with me before? And he's like, no, I didn't even think about that. Like, I've just been trying to be a nice guy. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Like, what do you think?
I don't get it. Okay, because I'm really interested. I do believe that I could definitely see you being a nice guy for sure. And not just like a nice guy, but a nice guy in this context. So it's interesting to me. Like, do you agree with him that he never even thought about it? Because like for me, if that was to happen on my end, I would have definitely been thinking about it. I would have just been keeping my mouth shut. But to say you didn't even think about it for 6 months, is that really feasible to believe?
I almost do think that. Like, maybe not for 6 months.
But you know what I mean. Where you just kind of put it in the back. I guess you just kind of put it in your little file drawer in your mind and close it.
I think that's it. It comes back to the contract because the contract for me, like, you know, I'll pick that up and I'll look at it and I'll go, hold on a minute. Like, if I say something now, I'm in conflict with the contract. Like, I've just got to stick to this contract where I am doing all the right things and my needs will be met eventually, you know? So it's the absurdity of the contracts. If you've got any of those contracts, rip them up.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's really cool to learn because I'm completely different in that way. And to me, I would be more thinking, I wouldn't say anything and I would think there's a contract, but I would expect that you should know and I shouldn't have to tell you. It wouldn't be because I felt like I was adhering to a contract. I would just feel like, well, you should just know without me telling you.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, does that play into it too? Or
I think so, yeah. I mean, it is some level of you expect your partner to be a psychic and kind of pick up on the vibes you're putting down, even though you're not vocalizing them. So, yeah, I think you're right. Have you had any, or has your significant other had any that you guys have ever discussed?
A contract or like a covert contract? Oh God, yes. I mean, it's like there's so many. I can't even really think of one to start with because I just think whenever you come into a relationship, you kind of expect the other person to not handle things isn't the right word, have the same perspective as you do on certain things, or and that's not even the right way to say either. I'm trying to think of exactly the right way to say it. So because you're finding a connection with this person, you think that they're like you because that's why you're attracted to them, is because you have similarities with them. And so then you carry that out further and you think, well, because we like the same sports team, well, this person must like to do the dishes the same way that I do them too. You know, it's just something stupid like that, where you just carry it over into every facet of your life. And you think just because you have some similarities and commonalities that everything is going to be similar and common across the board. So you almost have that covert, maybe that's your covert contract, is that you have to be like me.
Yeah.
Or you have to do things the way that I like them to be done, even if you don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And I think then maybe that's the overall contract. And then there's like a million clauses within that. Like, how do you put the toilet paper roll on the toilet paper holder? Do you put the seat down when you go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
It's like there's all these little clauses in there.
Yeah. You need a lawyer. You need somebody, you know, with the experience to sit down and say.
Can you imagine? Oh my God. Because I mean, I look at legal documents a lot in my accounting work, and I'm just thinking about that. If you tried to put a relationship into a contract, that would be pretty crazy.
It would be, you know, we kind of do. So many of us would do this. And it made me think, like, this is why the divorce rates are so high.
Well, yeah.
And this is why so many of us are frustrated in relationships, is because we all, you know, create these bloody covert contracts that, you know, like, it's always going to end in sadness. Like,
of course. And I think the difference is now in my current relationship, I still have them. But the difference is that I guess I recognize it sooner and we talk about it. Where before in my previous marriage, we didn't talk about it. And it just, like you alluded to at the beginning, it just builds up all this resentment.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where it's almost like it's so far gone, you're just done, you know. So much resentment has built up. So I feel like you're always going to have these. I think it's human nature in a way to have these covert contracts. Don't you feel
I think
that it's
so,
kind
yeah.
of just natural?
That's a good point that I hadn't thought of before, is that you probably can't eliminate them, but maybe it's you always have them, but you need to talk about them. So maybe it's having them, but then making them actually proper documents, I guess, like actually signing them together, sitting down being like, hey, so I I'm just thinking about sitting on the couch now with your partner going, hey, so here's my contracts. I've got about 50 of them here. You can have a look over them. Have you got any? No, you've got 50. Let's swap them over. You know,
you got a pen ready?
Yeah. Like, that sounds really unsexy. That's getting very far away from the sexy.
Exactly. You said we were going to be talking about sex here. This is not sexy, but no.
People are immediately turned off.
But, as they come up, once you feel that resentment building, I guess this maybe, but I think the idea of a covert contract can give people a framework to work with.
Yeah.
So once you feel that resentment building, all of a sudden it triggers. Okay, am I working within a covert contract here?
Mm.
And maybe you don't say that word to your partner because maybe that makes you sound like a nut. But there's like covert contract. What are you talking about? But at that point, that you've created some expectation in your mind that is not realistic, and it's time to have a talk.
Mm.
And come to some kind of negotiation, because in a contract you negotiate. Right? Because no contract ever starts out where both parties are like, oh yeah, that's 100% what I was thinking. No, you always have to negotiate.
Yes. Yeah.
So that makes sense.
I like it. I think that's something as well really practical that you can do. So would you say the first step is acknowledging so you could have feelings on something and then be like, hold on, is this a covert contract? Yes, it is. Okay, so I probably need to sit down and talk to my partner about this, and we can work through this together.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, but I think it helps to have that concept in mind, because I think being able to conceptualize it helps you recognize it sooner.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's very powerful to be able to picture. And even if you make a funny picture in your mind, like of this huge contract just rolling out across the floor, it's like, oh, I just broke out my contract again.
But so I like that.
We are getting kind of close to the end of our possible time on this topic. Did you want me to talk a little about virtue and how that might tie into?
Yes.
Well, it reminded me, so in my research about virtues and being virtuous, one of the quotes that just sticks with me that just sums it up so well is from Alan Watts. And he said that as soon as you try to become virtuous, you are no longer virtuous. It's like you're trying to, and it's so true with a lot of things. It's like, if you're trying to achieve something, you're never going to achieve it because you're focused on it too much almost. So with that being said, so many, in the relationship, you probably think you're being virtuous, and you made these contracts, these covert contracts, because you think that they're going to make you happy in some way, or maybe you think they're going to make the other person happy in some way. And so you think there's some virtue behind doing that. But what you haven't considered, and all of us forget to consider when we're being virtuous, is that we don't know anything about anyone, or we don't know that much about ourselves either. So anytime that we think we're doing something virtuous, we really have to question ourselves and really question ourselves and think, is that really true? Are we actually doing something virtuous, or is it actually going to do more harm than good down the road?
Yeah.
And so that's what it makes me think of with the contract is, I think you're creating these things as almost in your mind as almost like a self-preservation, some means of self-preservation or relationship preservation. And so you think you're doing the right thing, but it's going to end up causing a lot of problems and resentment and all that stuff we were talking about in the long run.
Yes.
So that's the way I would relate it to a virtue. It's because virtues often end up doing the same thing.
It's really interesting. But
does that make any sense?
Yeah, so by trying to be virtuous, you're immediately not virtuous.
Right. Once you're aware of it, once you're aware that you're trying to be virtuous. So I think too with you, what we're talking about with the contract, as soon as you're aware that you are trying to enforce this contract, all of a sudden you're standing in the way of what that contract is meant to do, which it's meant to preserve your relationship. And now you're just ruining your relationship.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, see,
that was
do
kind of
think
what I
that
was
it's
bumping around in the back of my head.
Yeah. So Aristotle and Robert Glover having a beer together, and they come up with this. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's